So we're gonna jump right into backing up Honey Bear, okay? Backing up is one of the most important exercises that you can do with your horse, and it's so underrated. Most people don't even really understand why it is we teach our horses to back up. So the reason why we teach a horse to back up, and you can see like she's thinking forward, she's creeping forward towards me. You see that? How she's just coming forward towards me? Like, I don't want her ever thinking back. I'm sorry, I don't want her ever thinking forward. Never. I always want her either patient or waiting for what I'm asking her to do next. If she's thinking forward, if she's creeping forward towards me, that tells me she's thinking forward. And we're gonna get more into this as we go throughout this work. But this idea of reading your horse's thoughts, right? Like we covered that in module 1, that the way we can read our horse's thoughts is by what they're doing with their body language, all right? So she's actually standing pretty nice and quiet now. That's the kind of position that I want my horse in. You see how her head's low, she actually has a hind leg cocked. I love this. That is what I'm looking for. But when my horse starts thinking forward, there we go, she lost attention, she started creeping forward, I'm gonna immediately correct that and say, no, ma'am, forward is never the option. So I'm just gonna leave her for a second so that I can explain this, because there's a reason why forward is never the option. I want you to think about any time you've ever had a horse accident or seen something bad happen or whatever. Usually it starts, I'm gonna back her off because she is kind of creeping towards me a little bit. Usually it starts with the horse deciding to go forward. Forward is always the best option for a horse in their natural environment because they can run away from things, they can run out of bad situations, they can basically just run away from their problems. And if we step outside of horses for a second, even with people, like we know that running away from your problems, that's never the best choice. That's never the best option because it's always going to end up coming back to bite you in the butt. And so we want to teach her that from the get-go. Forward is never the option. You're gonna find that as we go through the groundwork over and over again, forward is not the option. You see her pawing? That is a forward motion. When a horse is pawing like that, they are thinking about going forward, okay? So again, you can tell her intent's kind of forward. She's actually not being as pushy as she can be. She could be being more pushy. Some of you at home will have horses that are just super pushy and chargy and in your space. What you want to be is be very consistent about the expectation of them backing up. So I'm going to walk you through the backing up process, okay? So first thing is, number one, when we ask our horse to back up, we want to make sure that we are in a forward position, that we are putting pressure towards them. You see how my body language is saying back up, okay? I see a lot of people, they're backing up their horse and they're kind of lean back like this as they're adding pressure. And if I lean back like this, what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to end up maybe even influencing my pony to come forward towards me, okay? She's actually doing a pretty good job of not coming forward towards me. So my body language has to be saying back. You see how there's a little bit of belief there? When I start to, let me tip her nose, when I start to add that pressure towards her, she's actually believing that I'm just gonna come and take that space and get her to back up. All right, so body language has to be super on point. All right, the other thing is make sure you are consistent with your cues. I don't care what your cue is, just that you are consistent with your ask every time. So what do I mean by that? Well, for example, if I'm going to start by just kind of gently kind of waving my rope side to side, then I'm always going to start with that. Okay, if when I wave it doesn't work, I might start waving bigger, okay? See how she responded? I immediately took the pressure off of her to let her know that she made a good decision by stepping backwards. Good girl. Now see, she came forward. I'm gonna go back, light wave, and wave again. Oh, nope. If she's gonna square up, I don't want her to square up by stepping forward. I want her to square up by stepping backwards to square up those front feet, okay? Now, what I'm doing when I start with light pressure and then I get bigger pressure is this is called graduated progress, right? This is kind of a graduated pressure that I'm adding on her. So what that looks like is what you're seeing here. I'll start with little pressure, I'll get bigger and then bigger. Okay, good. She moved away from that pressure. I then take the pressure away. Nope, you can't come forward. Now this is kind of key here. You see how she has that rail behind her? even though she has the rail behind her, I'm still going to back up. And this is a big mistake that a lot of people make. They'll see that they have an object behind their horse, and then what they'll do is they'll stop at the object, they'll grab their horse and take their horse back to the middle of the pen where they have plenty of room to back up some more. Well, what have we just taught our horse? We've taught our horse that if I add pressure to you, all you have to do is back up to something inconvenient, and then I'll take the pressure away, and you'll get a release as we're going back to the middle of the pen, and then we get to start. So what we're essentially doing is teaching them that by backing into something, that gets them out of the pressure, okay? So if she's by a rail, I'm going to be understanding that mentally there is a block behind her, right? She's not going to want to back into it, but I'm going to let her figure it out. So I'm going to start gradually, again, graduating the pressure. And I'm going to let her kind of turn and figure out. I'm going to pick the pressure up. She's got to figure it out, figure it out. There, she rotated. She's moving backwards. I take the pressure away. So you can see how I'm really giving her lots of clarity as to what my expectation is, okay? So here we go. I'm going to start nice and, oh, she responded with really light pressure. She only took one step, but I like that initial response there. I'm gonna see if I can get that other foot, light pressure. There, she squared up nicely there, backed up for me. So when we're asking our horses to back up, it's a process, right? We're graduating the pressure. Now, there is one other way that I recommend sometimes with certain type of horses to ask them to back up. These are for really super just lazy horses, what I call sleepy horses. They're non-responsive, where you just apply an adequate amount of pressure. Up, she's going forward. So again, I have to be consistent. Forward is never the answer. Back, I'm gonna pick it up. I want more energy. I want her to know that that was a bad choice that resulted in a lot of work for her, okay? Because she just started going forward without me asking her to. Forward is never the answer. And you see how I'm being consistent with my expectation. Even if she takes one step right now, nope, forward is not the answer. I want her to know forward is never the answer. I'm watching that front leg, that knee starting to break over a little bit. Up, forward is never the answer. No, ma'am. So I'm just giving her this clarity so that she really understands what my expectation is. Now, I know that a lot of people like to be as light as possible with their horse, and that is important. No, ma'am. Forward is never the answer. Never the answer. And being light is important, but you also want to give them clarity. You want to be clear. So in order to give her clarity, I need to add enough pressure in order to show her what it is I'm wanting, okay? I don't know if you've noticed, but you can see that because she's not responding, I've actually, because she keeps trying to go forward, I've changed the way that I'm adding pressure now. Now, when she's just standing there and she starts to go forward, I'm kind of interrupting that thought process, that pattern of just wanting to drive forward by adding what we call adequate pressure, okay? So at first we started with graduated pressure, started with a little bit of pressure. If she responds, good. If she didn't, I just graduate to bigger and bigger pressure until she did. But now, to interrupt that pattern, that thought process of wanting to go forward, I go to adequate pressure, which means that I just apply what I think is enough pressure to get her to go backwards. There's no graduation of the pressure. I meet her where I think she needs to be in order to break that thought pattern and really say, nope, that was a bad choice. So that's what adequate pressure looks like. So going back to like sleepy horses, some of you have horses where you can graduate the pressure and you really just end up desensitizing them to the pressure. Now she's responding really well, okay? So gradual pressure for the most part is gonna work and be very effective with her. But if you have a big, lazy draft horse, it doesn't wanna move, that's just falling asleep on you, well, if you keep, no, I'm gonna back her up. If you keep doing graduated pressure with that horse, you're basically just going to desensitize them to the pressure. Okay, so what I want you to do with those types of horses, you're going to try graduated pressure first, see if it works. But if it doesn't, then you're going to go to adequate pressure, which means that you are immediately just adding enough pressure to get a response. and then that horse moves. Notice when I add pressure, I started with the wave. Let me show you a couple other things you could do. And I'm not gonna really show it with her because she is sensitive, she doesn't need this. But if I had a bigger horse, I might wave and I might start clucking and kissing and waving my hand from side to side, like really big, in order to get my horse to move, okay? So she's standing there, she's like, oh, is he just desensitizing me? No, when you do adequate pressure, make sure you get in there, cluck and kiss. She's kind of walking forward. I'm gonna stay with the pressure until she goes back. We're gonna push her past the object. I'm gonna wait for her to really just lower that head and just give. There we go, good. That was much better. So I kind of stuck with her. I guided her through the process. Even though she kind of wanted to go to the rail and stop, I said, no, we're gonna keep going. I want you to respond to this pressure. And so that's the difference with adequate pressure. We're not just being gradual, we're meeting them where they are, we're getting after them. Let's see. She thought about taking a step there and then she decided not to. I'm very pleased with that. That really demonstrates some good understanding on her part to me. And that's all that we need to get with this exercise. Your horse doesn't have to be doing it perfectly, but you want them to really demonstrate just a little bit more understanding than when we started. I'm just gonna give her a little bit of slack and see if she tries to step forward like she was doing earlier. I wanna make sure that she really, really gets this. And so far, so good. I like what I'm seeing. So make sure that you choose what type of pressure you need to use. And we're gonna be talking about this in our implementation of it. Do you need to use graduated pressure with your horse to back them up? Or do you need to use adequate pressure? And if so, start thinking about what is that pressure going to look like? How can I apply enough pressure and kiss and cluck and energy in order for that pressure to be adequate, to be sufficient enough to get the response that you need?